How would you feel about a mandatory mental health checkup as part of your yearly medical exam? I mean, I'd like to be able to get a yearly medical exam before I start worrying about mental health. I imagine my mental health would improve if I could simply afford to go to the doctor whenever I had a medical issue. What is this raspy cough I've had for a while? I have to get the brakes replaced this month. Let's hold off. This statement right here is uncomfortably common in America. It's basically a game of ignore it until it becomes a dangerous problem. Our lives are just a game of staggered debt. How long can I hold off before they start asking? How long until they're serious? How long until it goes into collections? How long until garnishment? How long until bankruptcy? Checkmate debt collectors. If my mill didn't die, she owed $400,000 in medical bills. That's what I call the American dream. If it weren't for having insurance, I'd owe about $200,000, not including my 5 to 10 years of post-cancer treatment to reduce chances of recurrence. Edit, typo. Insane. How's your health today? I died last week, but I have to stick around until final payment. Family won't look me in the eyes. Kind of sucks. Yearly medical exam? What are you talking about? If it meant I get some sort of treatment that didn't result in a huge bill later, then cool. Mandatory? No thanks. Highly encouraged? Subsidized? Day off work to go get your mental health checked out? National holiday for mental health checkups? Yes, 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 all that. Mandatory? No thanks. Bingo, there are ways to improve mental health, but some mandatory screening is way too big an invasion of privacy in my book. Mandatory just gets people to lie. It's incredibly hard to do. Except for the really extreme cases, most mentally ill people are capable of appearing normal, especially people with depression and anxiety, if they want to. Mandatory mental health checkups would only measure one's ability to pass mandatory mental health checkups. People who don't trust the system will find ways around it. Okay, but that's just the treatment-avoidant people. Go to the therapy-related subreddits and you will see regular posts asking whether someone's stuff justifies seeking out therapy. Spoiler, it always does. Regular check-ins would help people who think their suffering is normal realize that it is not. Depends on the question and questioner. I had a friend who went to a primary care doctor to address clinical depression. One of the questions a nurse practitioner asked was, "Have you ever thought of suicide?" Being in his late 20s said yes, back in high school. Apparently this was the wrong response because he wasn't suicidal, just really depressed. But he called the cops, who took him to hospital for a 72-hour hold. He was barely making it living paycheck to paycheck. He managed to talk them out of holding him, otherwise he would have lost his job. But as it was, instead of getting his needs addressed, he was stuck for a hospital bill. And he told me this: all they did was train me to not seek help if I ever felt suicidal. He got treatment eventually and is doing well. But when his new primary sends in a student doc practitioner as part of the training on dealing with patients, he lets them know about phrasing the question correctly. Don't ever use the word ever, say currently instead. You'll get a more accurate and relevant answer. And he tells them why. The simplest of questions phrased badly can really duck someone over, if answered badly. It's amazing to me, these stories of Americans being sectioned for feeling suicidal. In the UK you could be actively suicidal and they wouldn't take you. You could have just attempted suicide and they wouldn't take you, even if you really wanted to go. Forced? Yikes. Yeah, what the duck kind of dystopian shit is this? Sounds like a wet dream for the pharmaceutical industry to get everyone prescribed some form of antidepressant. I mean, that sounds great in concept, but also the sort of thing that would instantly be turned to be used against every sort of marginalized group that exists within like 14 minutes of being implemented. One of my first thoughts was abusive parents, partners using this to further abuse a victim, partners using it to try and manipulate custody cases. There is so many potentially horrible consequences. Just like red flag laws are. How would you feel about banning these type of posts? Yearly medical exam lol. Yeah, WTF lol. Haven't been to the doctor in like 8 years. Same. I could be growing aliens inside of me, and I would never know it until I'm hanging out with friends and they just pop out of my chest making screeching noises. A good PCP should be keeping an eye out for mental health warning signs anyway. I think making most any health issue mandatory is a dangerous slippery slope. Vaccines I understand in most cases, but not a mental health checkup. Wait, stop. I didn't write that. There is someone else in here who's typing. Someone help. Send a mandatory health specialist ASAP. Yearly checkups aren't even mandatory, so this makes no sense. It would become a reason why people don't even bother going to their annual in the first place. Duck no. My doctor always does this, to an extent, at my yearly checkups. Always asks where my stress and anxiety levels are, if I'm depressed, mood swings, etc. She always tries to give me anti-anxiety meds, very high stress job, but I always decline. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get anxiety meds when you actually have extreme anxiety? Oh boy, I had a tough few years. But then I got cancer, so they just throw anxiety meds at me like candy now. Small mercies, I guess. Edit, typo. Can't have a mandatory mental health check if you don't have an annual exam. This. I have some pretty extreme doctor phobia. The irony. You should see a doctor for that. Duck off with these shitty how would you feel posts. No, hear me out Reddit. How would you feel if every American got $1 million and a mandatory handjob? Bonus, here is a search for the top how would you feel? Posts. Look how much of a ducking circle jerk almost everyone is, it's embarrassing. Fuck that. Nobody is going to mandatory anything on me. Especially if you are truly open about your mental health and feelings, you may risk getting admitted against your will. So duck that. Orwellian as duck. And who gets a yearly medical exam? Not great. Mental health is far from a cut and dry, and it would be incredibly easy for a doctor to say you seem depressed, try some XYZ drug, which they're getting money from reps to push. Most depression drugs have some side effects. I think the doctor asking about how they feel their mental health is would be fine. If the person wants to discuss it more, they should be able to, but it's too fuzzy of a field to have any approach apply to everyone. It's like, have you seen how people would get medical marijuana cards? If there's an incentive to diagnose someone with something, they can do it pretty easily. I don't think we want the doctors acting on any behalf other than the patient's. Why mandatory? Optional mental health check or an optional therapy session, sure, but why mandatory checkup when normal health checkups aren't mandatory? It sounds like a government keeping tabs on people more than it sounds like helping people. Mandatory how? What are the consequences? I'm not okay with that. Medical professionals are not infallible, and I don't want to worry about losing my job or being put into a ward because someone was having a bad day or found some arbitrary reason to mark me as crazy. Where do we go from there? Mandatory medication? I understand that this idea probably comes from a good place, but no thank you. I don't believe in mandatory anything. No, stop with the karma whoring. Do I get a locator chip implant as well? The military already does this, but the system needs to be improved on, in my opinion. All it is a series of questions someone asks you. They ask if you ever consider hurting yourself or others, are you having trouble sleeping at night, stuff like that, but anyone could lie about it. This is better than nothing though. Unfortunately, Mental health issues can be hard to diagnose if the person doesn't want you to know about them. Yeah. And people hide their mental health problems because their career might be destroyed if they seek help. Like if you're a depressed but otherwise functional person, and you seek help, then you might end up as an unemployed depressed person. Now you're behind on bills and have even more problems. I've read in forums of pilots talking about hiding their depression because if you start taking antidepressants, you're grounded for a year and that can be detrimental to your career. Physicians are known to regularly hide mental illnesses out of fear of losing their licenses. I imagine this must be particularly bad in the military. Googling it, you find a few articles about how the military will occasionally just make up a bullshit reason to fire a soldier with mental health problems. I would bet that the soldiers know this. I would think that it would have less to do with my health and it would be more about harvesting information for insurance companies and big pharma.